We come together at a transformational moment. The advent of generative AI is redefining our lives and triggering robust debate about the future of work. When I listen to conflicting opinions on the opportunities and the challenges posed by AI today, I am reminded of a quote by George Bernard Shaw, who said, "Both optimists and pessimists contribute to society. The optimist invents the airplane, the pessimist, the parachute." I am an optimist. As a Kenyan, my attention is focused on Africa and how AI gives us the opportunity to level the playing field. My own sphere of work, communications and media, are facing a massive disruption by AI. I'm so proud to be partnering with the Rwanda Center for the Fourth Industrial Revolution on a special podcast series called Embedded, where we showcased our very best African thought leaders, entrepreneurs, innovators, and AI success stories. I'd like to introduce now the Managing Director of the Rwanda Center for the Fourth Industrial Revolution, Crystal Rujeje, and invite her to give her welcome remarks. Crystal.
Thank you, Zane. Excellencies, esteemed partners, innovators, industry leaders, and change makers, a very good morning to you all. It is a great honor and privilege to welcome you to the Global AI Summit on Africa. The Rwanda Center for the Fourth Industrial Revolution is proud to host this inaugural event with the government of Rwanda in collaboration with the World Economic Forum. Let me start by thanking our esteemed co-chairs, Her Excellency Lerato Mataboge, Dr. Senait Fiseha, Mr. Strive Masiiwa, Dr. Eric Schmidt, Dr. James Manyika, for their leadership in championing this historic convening on AI in Africa. I also wish to extend my deepest appreciation to our lead partners, the Gates Foundation, the MasterCard Foundation, Carnegie Mellon University Africa, and Google for their many partners who have supported us throughout this journey. Your support has been invaluable. We look forward to your continued partnership as we work towards realizing the summit's outcomes. Today, we stand at a pivotal moment of extraordinary possibility. With the unprecedented pace of technological development, artificial intelligence is estimated to unlock $2.9 trillion for Africa's economy by 2030. However, this will not happen by chance. It requires bold, decisive leadership and collective action. Africa is uniquely positioned to shape the trajectory of AI, driven by our greatest asset, our young, vibrant population. By 2035, Africa will have the world's youngest and largest workforce, a demographic dividend that is poised to drive immense economic opportunity. In the room today, we have over 400 young AI enthusiasts, including students, engineers, and entrepreneurs, digital natives, eager to harness the full potential of AI in Africa, not just as consumers, but as pioneers, building impactful solutions for their communities and for the world. As we convene over the next 2 days, let's ground our conversations around our youth. Let's talk about how we can empower them with competitive AI skills, transformative investment, and a conducive policy environment that safeguards their rights while driving growth and competitiveness. This Global AI Summit on Africa is not just about ideas, it is about action. Let's seize this moment to harness the tremendous energy in this room and create an African future, an African AI future that reflects our values, our humanity, and our strategic priorities. It is now my distinct pleasure to introduce one of our esteemed co-chairs, Her Excellency Lerato Mataboge, the Commissioner for Infrastructure and Energy at the African Union Commission. You're most welcome.
Your Excellencies, in particular, Your Excellency Mahmoud Ali Yusuf, the Chairperson of the African Union Commission, honorable ministers, captains of industries, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Good morning. I'd like to thank the people and the government of the Republic of Rwanda for the warm welcome and for the facilities availed to us since our arrival in the beautiful city of Kigali. AI should not stand for advancing inequality. These are the words of the UN Secretary General, Antonio Guterres. The African Union subscribes to these words. It is for this reason that the African Union's Executive Council approved the AU 5-year Continental AI Strategy. With the adoption of this strategy, the African Union and its member states are laying the foundation for Africa to become an integral participant in the AI revolution. The strategy reflects the common vision for AI in Africa under the theme Harnessing AI for Africa's Development and Prosperity, and is guided by AU values and puts forward an Africa-centric, development-oriented, inclusive approach towards an ethical, responsible, and equitable development in the deployment of AI across our continent. As we progress towards the implementation of the strategy, our focus should be on the following areas: the development of governance regimes for AI that responds to the African context and helps to preserve African interests; the building of individual and collective capacities of African countries in digital infrastructure, data sets, and computing; the creation, attraction, and retention of AI talents within Africa; addressing and mitigating the risks related to malicious use of AI technologies; fostering of AI-related partnerships and investments; the promotion of research and innovation; the development and enforcement of legal and regulatory instruments to protect African people against biases and misuse of AI systems, as well as the strengthening of international cooperation to ensure proactive African participation in shaping global AI landscape. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Africa is already embracing AI, as many innovative startups are at the forefront of the continent's economic and technological transformation. Between 2020 and 2023, the use of AI to improve healthcare delivery in Africa attracted around $550 million in investments, with nearly 350 startups across 27 countries in Africa working in the digital health supply chain. These investments enabled our continent to track life-saving vaccines and other essential health products with the aim of reducing costs and saving lives. Fintechs themselves are serving the needs of over 50% of the unbanked and underbanked population in Africa and contribute to financial and social inclusion of whole communities. Locally developed startups are revolutionizing the agriculture sector by helping more than 30 million small-scale farmers access essential information and improving productivity by up to 30%. Indeed, AI presents enormous opportunities for our continent. It has the potential to accelerate the attainment of Agenda 2063, stimulate large-scale socioeconomic transformation, drive innovation, create new industries, and generate new business and employment opportunities. There are, however, risks that we need to be mindful of and that we must manage. In the absence of reliable domestic AI expertise in Africa and high-quality local data sets, AI technologies developed outside of Africa can perpetuate and exacerbate existing biases and facilitate the spread of AI-generated misinformation, disinformation, with negative implications on the cohesion of our society, thus risking African peace and stability. Therefore, building our capabilities in Africa and adapting AI to local African realities is critical to address the multifaceted challenges and opportunities that AI presents to us. The African Union calls for a coordinated and proactive African participation in defining the rules that will govern AI and advocates for fair distribution of AI-related resources and more balanced global AI governance that considers the principles of equity and solidarity among countries and regions to enable equal access to AI-based benefits. I would like to highlight that the AU has adopted in recent years key strategic frameworks that lay the foundation to AI development, such as the Digital Transformation Strategy for Africa, the AU Data Policy Framework, the Malabo Convention on Cybersecurity and Personal Data Protection, among others. We have further engaged with our member states and partners to mobilize technical and financial resources to support the implementation of these frameworks towards the creation of a consolidated and resilient African AI ecosystem. Indeed, AI should not stand for advancing inequality. Similarly, AI should not stand for African imports. Localization matters for Africa to participate in the fourth industrial revolution. Finally, we need to ensure that AI enhances human effectiveness and that it is not a tool for replacing unique human strengths and human intelligence. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. It's not about ideas, it's about action. And that is why we are all gathered here today. Excellency, I particularly liked, as we all did, that AI should not stand for advancing inequality. And I was thinking maybe it should stand for African intelligence. Thank you. Right? A rebranding opportunity for all of us. I'd like you all to now turn your attention to the screens where we're going to hear some video remarks from Bill Gates, the chair of the Gates Foundation.
Thank you, President Kagame, for inviting me to share a few words with you all and for convening this important gathering. I wish I could be with you today in Kigali. This summit comes at a critical moment, both for AI and for Africa. Already, innovators are applying AI to sectors ranging from agriculture to education to economic opportunity. If you look at healthcare, our partners, some of whom are with you today, are starting to use AI-powered ultrasound with large language models to identify mothers whose pregnancies are high risk. And by identifying those, it could save millions of mothers' lives across Africa, because in remote areas where the doctor's not nearby, you'll know who needs to go and be at a center to get better care. And so applying AI broadly to maternal health really is an amazing opportunity to save lives. AI is also starting to help farmers, help them understand weather that's often worse because of climate change. AI is helping students in the classroom, and it's fantastic to take the kind of paperwork and complex policies that governments have and connect to citizens so they understand how to work efficiently with the government. And so the Gates Foundation has as a very high priority supporting AI innovation that have the potential to save and improve lives. You'll hear a lot more about how we're doing this and the great partners we're supporting throughout this summit. Today, the world faces big challenges, and it's a critical moment because some countries are, at least for now, reducing their commitments to global health and development. Now, the good news is that innovation is giving us an opportunity, whether it's in health or agriculture. We'll get more innovations, and that's also being accelerated through artificial intelligence. So Africa's not just poised to benefit from AI, it has a chance in many areas to absolutely lead the way. I hope you're starting this conference with the kind of hope that I have about the potential of AI to improve lives, and that you leave having a concrete view of how we'll work together to carry that forward. Thank you.
Now, I would like to introduce our expert panelists who will delve into the opportunities and the challenges AI presents for Africa's socio-economic development. First, I would like to introduce and call to the stage the moderator for this session, Nima Elmi, the co-founder of the Africa Dialogues. Please join me on stage. I would also like to welcome and invite our esteemed panelists to the stage and request that you kindly be seated in the order that I introduce you, starting closest to the moderator. Dr. James Mwangi, Managing Director and CEO, Equity Group Holding. Honorable Paula Ingabire, Minister of ICT and Innovation, Rwanda. His Excellency Wamkele Mene, Secretary General, African Continental Free Trade Area. The Honorable Bosun Tijani, Federal Minister of Communications and Digital Economy of Nigeria. Jeremy Jurgens, Managing Director and Head of the Forum Center for the Fourth Industrial Revolution. Nima, over to you.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Zain. Welcome to Kigali at the inaugural Global AI Summit on Africa. I'm Nima Elmi, VP for Strategy and Policy of EMEA at Circle and co-founder of the Africa Dialogues. And it's my pleasure to host and moderate this inaugural plenary. Starting with you, Minister Ingabire, we're sat here in beautiful Kigali talking about AI. Suddenly everybody wants to talk about AI. I would welcome you to share how Rwanda is balancing AI innovation and the regulation of AI, particularly as it pertains to positioning Africa in the global AI governance discussions.
Thank you very much, Nima. Good morning, everyone, and very excited to be hosting you over the next 2 days here in Kigali as we have critical conversations around how we can innovate together and grow together when it comes to AI development. But coming very quickly back to your question and very cognizant of time, how is Rwanda looking at balancing innovation and regulation? For us, really, these two things must coexist. It's not having to choose between one or the other. And how we do that, it's really ensuring that we have an environment that enables innovation to thrive in a responsible manner. We've done a couple of things, starting with the policy framework that we already put in place, and that was accompanied by our ethical guidelines that were designed to ensure that the way we develop AI solutions and deploy AI solutions across different industries allows for us to do it in an ethical and responsible manner, but also while thinking about issues around bias and discrimination that could come from really the type of data that we're using to train these models. Secondly, we're also looking at, we've already put in place regulatory sandboxes, which becomes very important because globally what we're seeing is that with AI innovation, all of us as policymakers, as regulators, we are trying to catch up with the pace at which AI is evolving. And so to do that, we've been able to create regulatory sandboxes that allow us to test and learn while we're really deploying some of these AI solutions, responding to some of the fundamental challenges that we have in society, but also doing it in a responsible manner. And I'll end on two things, which is really around creating a network of researchers, because as you think about AI development and deployment, it starts from how you design these solutions, creating a collaborative effort where we co-develop some of these AI standards, bringing together the academia, the policymakers, the tech companies, to really build these standards that are going to guide how we develop many of these AI solutions. And I'll end on this. I think it's very great that we have such a gathering, because when we talk about AI, it's borderless in nature, and that's why such conversations are very critical, that we're not thinking about it as Rwanda alone, but thinking about it in the context of the continent and the level of collaboration that is needed in driving AI development. Thank you.
That's a beautiful segue, actually, to you, Secretary General Mene, and the AFCFTA. Since it became operational in 2021, we've already seen a 3.2% increase in intra-Africa trade. So that's already excellent progress. I'd love to hear from you how you see the potential for Pan-African impact of AI, particularly around intra-Africa trade. Welcome your thoughts.
Well, thank you very much. First, let me congratulate the government of Rwanda and appreciate really the initiative to bring us here for this very, very important topic. All of us woke up this morning to an announcement about increased tariffs that will impact, certainly that will impact on many African countries. The Commissioner for Infrastructure and Energy made a very important point about technology and development. And so I believe the question for us is, how do we deploy technology to advance Africa's development in the current global context, the current geo-economic context that certainly is very, very challenging. In the wisdom of our heads of states, this year we adopted the protocol on the last annexes of the protocol on digital trade, which includes provisions, very, very important provisions on emerging technologies and the regulatory frameworks that are required to be established to enable innovation in areas such as artificial intelligence to advance intra-Africa trade. So how do we deploy artificial intelligence at our borders? How do we deploy artificial intelligence for intra-Africa agricultural trade products, for custom systems harmonization? So I believe that Africa has been innovative in ensuring that we leverage on this nexus between technology, in particular artificial intelligence, as well as the development of our continent through legally binding obligations. This is the first of its kind. This protocol that we are talking about is the first of its kind, and I believe over the next 2 days, we can leverage on this important development which is happening within a legislative
appreciation for what Rwanda has done in pulling us together. Perhaps we should give Rwanda a strong round of applause for bringing us here. Thank you so much. I think when we talk about youth in Africa, we're talking about our superpower. That's really what it is. When I was appointed minister, I paid attention to the developments in AI. And it was obvious that whilst it may appear that we're slightly behind, but we actually have the core ingredients that is required to power AI globally, not just in Africa. If you consider the fact that this is a continent with about 70% or thereabout of our people being under the age of 30. Yeah. In Nigeria, with over 230 million people, the average age is 16.9. Extremely youthful, extremely youthful. And whilst people may be saying AI is going to take jobs away, we've also seen that last year, for instance, there were about 4.5 million jobs in the technology space that we couldn't fill. So there's global shortage in people to actually power the technologies that we're talking about. A lot of the developed countries are declining in population because they're not giving birth to more kids, aging population as well. So Africa has a unique opportunity actually within the AI landscape, and that unique opportunity is only going to be tapped if we prioritize investment in our young people, if we prioritize investment in talent. Which is why when I was appointed, the first thing we did was to actually launch the largest technology talent accelerator in the world. So the president says we have to create 1 million technical jobs, but I thought, if we're going to create 1 million technical jobs, we must train more than 1 million. So we decided we're going to train 3 million people in technology skills, and about 5% of that is solely for AI and machine learning. And this is something we've done, not just exposing these people to opportunity to learn, but also saying we have to give them a chance to truly practice and build, which is why we've created Applied Learning Center all across the country, because we also are very aware that AI is about productivity, and if AI is about productivity, we must see local solutions from artificial intelligence. Right, and these are the young people that are going to build it. So we've not just started training, we've also created a community of practice in Nigeria, something that is called the AI Collective. And the essence of the AI Collective is to be able to pull everyone together working in AI so that we can actually create a community of practice that will leverage the resources that we have, but also partner with important nations to help us drive the growth that we want to see within AI. But one critical thing to also say is the ability of these young people to build will also be limited by the availability of data. Because most of our languages, most of our context and reality, they're still in dark data. They've not been digitized, connected. And there's no AI if the data is not local. So we've actually started building a multimodal, multilingual language model in Nigeria that is being powered by these 3 million people that we're training. And the goal is that as they build this body of data set, that eventually we can also open that up. A lot of the languages in Nigeria, if you take Yoruba, Hausa, for instance, are being spoken in multiple African countries. And some of those languages are spoken by about 40, 50 million people. So these are significant set of people. So we have to create for them. So I think the way we see it is that, for Africa to truly tap into the opportunity that exists within AI, that we must collaborate without compromising sovereignty. Yeah. Because AI is local, the true opportunity for AI is local. So as we train, as we build a strong ecosystem in Nigeria, what other ecosystem exists out there that we should be partnering with? What are the opportunities for us to share things like data, perhaps come up with similar data standards, or in some cases share infrastructure as well, which I believe is something that you probably still talk about. Thank you.
You touched on a few different points that I will come back to you on, Minister. Looking to you, Dr. Mwangi, we've heard that there's really important work that's being done by the public sector, by governments in this space, and at the Pan-African level. At Equity Group, one of the truly impressive things that you launched last year was the African Recovery and Resilience Plan. and really as a private sector-driven initiative to address some of the shortcomings that exist, whether across infrastructure, financial inclusion, AI adoption. And so I'd love you to share with the audience a little bit more about why you and Equity Group decided to put together the plan and what the ambitions are for the plan, particularly in terms of leveraging AI and data models to deliver some of the goals like financial inclusion under the plan.
Thank you very much, and it's a real pleasure to be here. It is true that year but one, Equity Group, in partnership with global institutions, local institution governments, we launched the African Recovery and Resilience Plan, a transformational plan driven by the private sector. And this plan was informed by the recognition that the private sector works very well in clusters, in ecosystems, and in value chains. And so unless you have a plan that all of you are abiding to, that you're working synergistically to support each other, then it becomes challenging, because then the private sector operates in silos. So with this plan, then we have a coherent, integrated plan that we can all play on and see transformation. We're very excited that the global financial institutions, the multilateral institutions, governments, the UN agencies have all signed to it so that we could work together. But when we did this, then we saw the biggest opportunity of fast-tracking execution and achievement of this plan was to use technology, and specifically AI. And we saw this would play in two facets: at the enterprise level and at the sector or industry level. And at the institutional level or enterprise level, it's where then you focus on the internal environment to ensure we build capabilities and competencies in our institutions, in our enterprises, and broadly, it's strategic decision making, such that the decisions are very well informed with significant data and data that has been analyzed and producing insights. But the outcome of that is then you create an enabling environment for innovations, operational efficiency, achievement, enhancement of productivity within the organization. And that's what we have seen, particularly for Equity. We have started unlocking those opportunities. At the industry level and sector level, then we see greater collaboration. And what we have seen is a huge opportunity for greater financial inclusion through digital banking. And that has really been led by credit scoring mechanisms, automated assistance to customers like chatbots and virtual assistants, and reward systems for your clients, while at the same time managing fraud, because you can proactively detect fraud. So in such a vertical like financial inclusion, then you can see how much we can rely on. But I think it is in the real economy, specifically in agriculture, that we are now starting to see precision farming methods being adopted using AI. We are seeing better supply chain management by an entire sector. And of course, access to credit and insurance in agriculture is now, because there is predictability that you can do, whether it's weather prediction. AI is very, very supportive. But as has been said, healthcare is also a big beneficiary. But ultimately, I think what would really change the game is adoption of AI by SMEs. Once it is adopted at the SME level, then we'll see business intelligence cutting across all enterprises. We'll see value chains becoming more efficient because they are populated by efficient SMEs. We'll see targeted customer support by SMEs. But more importantly, we'll see greater opportunities for SMEs to participate in e-commerce and digital trading. And that will eventually give all these SMEs visibility as the visibilities that large organizations enjoy.
I think that deserves a round of applause. There's a lot to unpack there, which hopefully we'll try and come back to. If I look to you, Jeremy, we're here hosted by the Rwanda Center for the Fourth Industrial Revolution. That is part of one of the core initiatives of the World Economic Forum. And you, as the head of the global network, I'd love to hear from you what policy interventions and partnerships you feel or have seen are the most needed to really accelerate AI adoption and AI-driven growth in Africa.
Great, thank you, Nima. And I'd also like to thank Minister Ingabire, the government of Rwanda, for actually bringing this summit together. I know this is something we've discussed through our partnership and collaboration, and it's just great to see all of the energy, the startups, the youth, all here contributing for AI in Africa. To your question on policy interventions, I'd maybe like to start with something a little bit provocative. A lot of the times I was at the research colloquium yesterday, and we were hearing, oh, we need AI sovereignty. We have to start with AI sovereignty. Personally, I think AI sovereignty is a myth, even if you're the US or China. And I don't think we need frontier models at $500 billion. And maybe the analogy I would use here is airports, airplanes. You don't need to build your own airplanes to be able to get the benefits of aviation. But you do need the enabling infrastructure, you need the talent, you need the regulatory environment, you need to protect the sovereignty in your airspace, as it may be, or your AI space. You want to be able to protect that sovereignty there. And so then where should we focus? And I'd agree with the panelists here. We've heard of the importance of talent. There's a shortage of 300 million AI or 300,000 AI workers that we would need just by 2027 to be able to unlock some of the productivity gains. We do need compute and connectivity, not necessarily supercomputers per se, but we need just basic data capabilities. 82% organizations store their data out of country, so they don't maintain sovereignty over the data. Most of the languages aren't present in the natural language models being used to build. And we also need energy to power those data centers. So there's just some fundamental aspects that we need to get the foundations in place. Now, when we do that, I think we unlock a lot of opportunities. And James, you spoke to the importance of agriculture. Also, we heard it from Bill Gates earlier. So I'd like to give a concrete example from our work in the C4I network on what you can do when you actually bring AI to power something like agriculture. And we'll hear a lot of examples from Africa over the coming days and from startups. So I'd like to take one from a center, Fourth Industrial Revolution Center in Telangana, India. And we actually used AI tools. We brought the community together, the ministry, private companies, startups, multinationals, to say, okay, how could we unlock the benefits of AI and digital tools for farmers? And we used 7,000 chili farmers for our first pilot there. And in a 6-month crop cycle, we were able to double their incomes because these digital tools enabled better use of water, reduced utilization of fertilizers, faster time to market. So concrete benefits translated to those farmers. We then took that pilot to the next stage. We said, okay, let's run pilot 2, extend it to 50,000 farmers. Again, we saw close to doubling capabilities there. We're in the second year of the program now. We're currently getting the results from 500,000 farmers that are using these tools and networks. And so at speed, we can quickly unlock the benefits of the AI revolution for the citizens, for the people that make the most sense. We can do that in agriculture. We can do that in education. We can do that in healthcare. And when we empower the people, that'll be the foundation of which we can build a prosperous Africa and a prosperous world there. So very excited to be part of that and also partner again with the CR4I Center here in Rwanda to take that message forward to the continent and globally.
I'd like to pick up one of the points you raised around, at the outset you said you don't have to, if you look at airports, you don't have to build the airplanes individually. You can resource share. And so maybe if I turn to you, Minister Tijani, this is a concept that you had spoken about and written about, the distributed innovation system, right? The position that each African nation doesn't have to be good at everything AI, but we can focus on the AI innovations that we are leading on and then share that intelligence so that as a continent we can excel together. I'd love you to say a little bit more around how you see the continent really evolving in this space, leveraging this distributed innovation system theory.
Thanks, Nima. I think the fact is we can't ride on the traditional means of developing innovation systems, which is quite national in nature. Development economists would talk about national innovation system. If as a continent were to take that part, it will take many of our nations a significant amount of time to build the different elements of your national innovation systems, which means there's a unique opportunity for us to actually collaborate. But this collaboration in itself can't produce value when nations don't have clarity on what they're bringing to the table, which is why distributed innovation system is extremely important. Every African nation needs to explore artificial intelligence and have clarity on what they're doing with it, which is why I don't totally agree with the fact that we should exclude the word sovereignty from AI. Because as Mr. Yogen was suggesting, while AI sovereignty may be a joke, you also mentioned the fact that there needs to be sovereignty around your airspace, for instance. And we talk about this technology as if it's just another set of technologies, which is not true. This is a technology that eventually will determine how we think, what we think, and how we do things. Will determine competitiveness. And like SG was talking about this morning, we woke up to a new set of tariffs because nations still compete. For resources, for opportunities. So I think what we need to be exploring around distributed innovation is helping each African countries to have clarity on what they want to do with AI, to have clarity on what they're bringing to the table. And perhaps we can then start to talk about collaborating, which is what I was referring to as collaborating without compromising, right? We can start to think of, are there opportunities for us to align strategies, but respecting sovereignty? Can we talk about shared infrastructure? Perhaps we can co-invest in platforms and compute. Can we even collaboratively do some research and development that we think are common to our reality? But also when we engage private sector, can we jointly engage these private sector organizations in seeing how we can support the development of artificial intelligence on the continent? AI is local. AI will always be local. There will be solutions that are global. Gen AI tools, you can use them from anywhere. But if your reality is not even captured in these Gen AI tools, it will become extremely difficult. When you start to talk about agriculture, there are certain kind of foods that you find in Western Central Africa, for instance, plantain, that may not be in South Africa. So the reality of even how we apply it in agriculture has to be local. It has to be based on context. So there's not going to be a way where we truly support Africa to appropriate artificial intelligence without building strong local capacity.
Perhaps if I come back to you then, Minister Ingabire, because I think one of the great achievements of Rwanda is really establishing a center that has unlocked public-private collaboration to not only develop the policies, to pilot the technologies, but then to think about scaling them to other jurisdictions. So I'd love you to kind of just build on what Minister Tijani was just saying and really touch upon, how you would model for the rest of the continent this approach. Is it one that you believe should scale, or is there a more nuanced way of thinking about individual nation strengths that can then be scaled across the continent?
Thank you, Nima. And as Minister Bosun rightly said, I think what we're doing, and perhaps why we're also here and having this conversation, is there are things that we're going to need to collaborate on as a continent or as governments. So when it comes to the policies and regulations, pretty much the regulations, how do we make sure that we have one harmonized legislation that allows for the different innovators across the 54 countries to be able to scale easily and serve the different markets? So I think that's something where there's an opportunity for us to come together as a continent and think through what these regulatory frameworks are going to look like. And the good news is that we're all still in the very early stages of figuring out what the regulatory frameworks should be, what should be regulated, what shouldn't be regulated, what is ethical, what's not, and really figuring out the standards together. On the other hand, what we also need to see is for every country, how they leverage artificial intelligence to drive socioeconomic development may differ. For one country, they could see very interesting use cases around the mining industry. For others, it could be the financial service sector. For others, agriculture, healthcare. And you could find a few countries that really have almost similar priorities. What we did in Rwanda when we put in place our national AI policy was to also go back and understand what are the low-hanging fruits in terms of industries where we feel like if we deploy AI, we will see the impact that we want to see, but it will also allow us to quickly work on the other building blocks like the regulations, the talent, the compute capacity, and the infrastructure and data that is needed. So that's one. The other thing, the third point is around, which is something we've been discussing with the various ministers across the continent, AU and everyone, is could we even come up with a maturity index or a readiness index that allows us to understand as a continent where are each of our countries at in this level of AI development, what are the next steps, and what do we need to do collectively. I'll end on the one around compute, which I like what Minister Bosun was sort of pointed out around, could we even co-invest as countries? One of the outcomes that we're looking to have at the end of this summit is the creation of an AI fund where we can have a commitment as African countries, as stakeholders, partners, to really mobilize resources that are needed to get into developing the much needed compute infrastructure that we need, the talent that we need. Obviously, we need to think about energy, because for AI, there are amounts of energy that are needed. Many countries are developing their nuclear programs around having power plants. How can this enable us to also close the gap of energy, which is a critical resource to how we can have reliable compute infrastructure for this? And so I'll just maybe close on this one, which is there a one-size-fits-all model for every country? I don't think so. I think what we are doing here in Rwanda will differ with what Nigeria is doing, but what we are agreeing on is that we can share experiences and so that countries are not reinventing the wheel in trying to figure out where do we start as we build our AI capabilities, but also the common understanding that we want to develop together and make sure that no one on the continent is left behind.
That's a great segue, actually, to pull you in, Secretary General Mene. In some ways, we have that Pan-African cohesion under the AFCFTA, right? In that, do you see this as an opportunity to really leverage that agreement to think about how we should be governing cross-border data flows, how we should be thinking about cross-border payments, how we should be thinking about consistency and cohesion between African nations when it comes to the use of AI in the trade context?
No, certainly. It is an opportunity to have a single digital market, which is what the AFCFTA has created across all of these areas that you've mentioned. So, for example, establishing a seamless payments regulatory framework. Our continent has 42 currencies. To trade, we have to buy a third currency, increasing the cost for trade on our continent, particularly for smallholder farmers and SMEs. In the area of cross-border data flows, similarly, in the AFCFTA, the protocol actually prohibits the restrictions on data flows across the continent as it relates to commercial activities. So if you are a particular bank, EcoBank, or Equity Bank or Standard Bank, you are in Mozambique, you want to transfer your data to commercialize it in Togo, the protocol enables that to happen. You mentioned also technologies that are emerging. Similarly here, the objective is to create a regulatory environment, as the Honorable Minister was saying, regulatory sandbox that encourages investment in innovation on our continent, not for the sake, just for the sake of innovation, but to address our economic development challenges. I think this is a very, very important aspect of our objective, is that we want, it's not just for competitiveness sake, which is important, it is truly to advance our economic development objectives, reducing the cost of trade, enabling access to agricultural markets, enabling inclusion in Africa's digital economy. We have to take advantage of all the tools that are at our technological tools that are at our disposal in order to make sure that our continent does not get left behind in terms of development. And I believe that this is a very unique opportunity that we have to deploy these technologies to that end, to advance our own economic development as a continent through a single digital market.
Dr. Mwangi, if I come back to you briefly, Minister Ingabire mentioned the Africa AI Fund. I'm sure Equity Group will contribute. No pressure. But I'd love to kind of just hear your thoughts around the role of industry in being able to contribute beyond, your recovery and resiliency plan in funding the development of AI infrastructure, of reskilling, of having this as a Pan-African effort. There's always that discussion about triple bottom line, but in this instance, it is an opportunity to fund the future talent pool that will inevitably be growing African businesses and creating new African businesses. So I'd welcome your remarks on what you think African businesses are able to contribute in terms of digitizing their services, but also contributing to initiatives like this as a Pan-African effort.
Thank you. I think AI is of strategic importance to both the private sector and the public sector, like the social sector and the economic sector equally. So as was said earlier on, I think we need to move from the narrow mentality, this is private and public, but create AI public infrastructure that benefits across the population across the continent. If we really want to lift the continent, we need to use trade. And was said, we shouldn't have digital IDs for countries, we should have digital IDs for the continent. If we're using infrastructure, we should not be having public infrastructure and private. We should invest together. So I would really be rallying for participation of the private sector to build the public digital AI infrastructure that benefits all and lifts everybody on the continent.
We're almost at time. Before we close, rapid fire 1 minute answers around when we reconvene at the next Global AI Summit on Africa in Africa, in a year's time, what is the key milestone that you would have hoped we have achieved in the year? Maybe I'll start with you, Jeremy.
Great. I think I would look to two things. One is this regulatory alignment that actually avoids that we're competing with each other, sending mixed signals to the market, the private sector. And the second is progress on this AI public infrastructure that can unlock the benefits for the smallholder farmers, for the SMEs, and for the 800 million youth that are AI natives.
Minister.
For me, I think it's compute. It is expensive, but not too expensive for Africa. You know, AI is young, Africa is young, so we can lead. So we must invest in compute one way or the other within the next 12 months.
I would say that as an outcome of our gathering here, my hope is that we have an actionable call to action, that in a year's time we can come back and measure progress. You mentioned the fund, the AI fund. I think it's very important to mobilize investment, as Dr. Mwangi was saying, both in digital public infrastructure to enable economic development. Second, I would say implementation of the regulatory harmonization that we seem to be aligning towards is important to measure how many countries have actually implemented the harmonized digital single market rules that we have agreed to.
Minister.
So for me, it would be two things, talent. And I think what we're seeing is that Africa only makes up 4% of the global AI workforce. So what do we do as the 54 nations to make sure that we have, you know, the critical mass of people that are going to be building these innovations that leverage AI and drive development? And the second one for me is to see increased adoption of AI, not just in the public sector. And I like what Dr. Mwangi said around seeing this happening also in the private sector. MSMEs also, you know, being at the forefront of how they leverage AI to drive their business growth.
Amazing.
I think for me is that next year, this time, we should have made the initial investment. If nothing else, in public digital infrastructure that creates resilience, but more importantly, bring equity to access to opportunities or democratize opportunities for our youthful population.
Amen to that. Please put your hand together for this distinguished panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nema. Thank you to all our panelists for the very insightful discussion. Among the highlights that I took away were we must share data, we must share infrastructure, how the adoption of AI by SMEs will be game-changing and value chains can become more efficient. We must build strong local capacity. There is no one-size-fits-all. We must focus on local language and the integration into AI models. The panelists talked about the importance of talent, the importance of compute, the importance of connectivity, and just basic data capabilities. Jeremy said, AI sovereignty is a myth. I think this could be a robust debate between us, and as a former journalist, I always like to stir up a little controversy. And another perspective I think we could consider is Africa has been physically colonized before, and we don't want the data of ours to be colonized. So I think that we want to offer some different perspectives at this conference, and so thank you, Jeremy, for raising that. And for all the entrepreneurs in this room, I did some homework and asked some questions about the AI fund that Minister Ingabire had mentioned. And Rwanda will provide more details about that. And we would just really like to thank Rwanda for taking the lead on doing something so critical and so important for our entrepreneurs in this room and across the continent, because that investment and building that ecosystem is going to be game-changing for everyone here trying to make that difference. So thank you to Rwanda for creating that. Bigger applause. Come on now. Thank you, Crystal. I'd like us to take a short break right now and request also if you could just remain in the room. Up next, our conversations will be featuring government and industry leaders. So for a few minutes, just stand up and stretch, talk to your neighbor, make new friends, and we'll be back shortly. Thank you.